Is this you? You're struggling to balance both your sport and studies and you feel like you're getting absolutely nowhere with both. Well, you're not alone. And the good news is that you can actually find a way to balance both and start to succeed in both of those arenas. How do I know this? Because I've done it. I've not only failed at it, but I've also then begun to succeed where I've both balanced my studies and made it as a professional athlete. So in this video, I'm going to show you why you're struggling to balance both sports and studies, how you can effectively start to balance them to get the best results in both. Plus, I'll share with you one piece of advice that I wish I had heard earlier. So you're going to want to hang around. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Lewis Hatchett, former professional athlete, mindset coach, and mental performance coach to athletes. Also a master's student in performance psychology at Bangor University, host of the Raising Your Game podcast, and creator of the Mindstrong Sport app. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel by hitting the button, hit the bell so that you don't miss out on any new videos coming your way. Let's get going. All right, why are you struggling to balance both your studies and your sports? Again, I have been here. I have struggled with this massively. You want to go down one route, you know that the other's important, but then you feel like if you spend time on the other one's going to lack, and then it just becomes this huge cycle. So I think there's about 5 things that ultimately cause why you struggle to balance both of these. So I think the first one that comes up is ultimately poor time management. This is the number one thing that people fall into the trap of. They're just not managing their time. And this really is what you're going to hopefully get to by the end of this video. You're either not planning ahead far enough, you're either just trying to cram everything and just living in a constant sea of stress. And when you're not managing your time effectively, you're just ultimately not getting anything done. And that leads into number 2. That's where you don't have a structure. Without a plan, it's really easy to get lost, to go from day to day and just miss out on focusing where you need to. So having a structure is ultimately important, of putting in the right things in the right part of the day that are either going to build on each other, and you're just not picking anything out of the air. You're actually building a recipe of what you're trying to make. This leads into number 3. You might have unclear goals. Chances are that you're not massively clear on what it is you're trying to achieve. Maybe the academics is quite obvious. You're just trying to get through the work and get to the exam, but maybe in sports, you're not actually clear on the goals that you're trying to achieve when you go to every session. Or if you do go to a session, you're just maybe trying to do too many things at once, or maybe not enough. And ultimately, you just don't know what you're aiming at, and it's really hard to stay motivated when you're unsure what you're getting out of every session you're doing. That leads into number 4, where you might have decision paralysis. There could be a sense you have too many options. You have too many things that can leave you feeling stuck. You're unsure whether you need to prioritize your studies or your sports or your training, reading, or whatever it might be. And you're just so unsure what to do that you end up doing other things, which comes into the last one, which is distractions. You then end up throwing yourself into things that make you feel good, whether it's social media, scrolling through your phone, going and seeing friends, just maybe even minor tasks of cleaning your place or your environment. I know when I'm doing that and I procrastinate, this place has never looked cleaner. And ultimately, you're just spending time which eats away at the time you could be focusing on getting these things done and actually making progress on what will ultimately make you feel better in the end. All right, so how do we actually balance these better and start to see results in both? So I've got 6 things that ultimately you can use that will help you try and balance these out. First up is really looking at setting your goals and being realistic with both. To set this up, you might find that you need to set more priority-based goals in one compared to the other. So at one time in your life, your academics might take a bit of a front seat compared to your sport, but that doesn't mean that you can't make progress in both. So you might put a focus on a big goal, say in your academics. You might have a big exam coming up, so you put a lot of time into that. And that's where you start to be smart with the goals that you're setting in, say, your sport. You're not trying to make big, giant leaps in your sport, but you're actually doing things that you know that if you go to a training session, you haven't got to be there hour on end. But you know, if you go there and maybe work on a technique, a skill, or just working on maybe a workout that's going to add and build in the long run, that makes you feel like you're still making progress. It's still a goal. It's not a massive goal, but it's still strategic and works towards that end result, rather than thinking you've got to set big goals in both and achieve both all at the same time and simultaneously. You can set big goals in one and then let another have a less of a priority but smaller goals, and then flip later on down the line. But ultimately, it's being really clear, really specific on what your academic goals are, what your athletic goals are, and what it is that you want to be working on in each of those moments to get towards that end goal. How big or how small depends on what is the priority right now for you, but you got to set it, you got to make sure you know what is priority. And then next is to really focus on not thinking that everything has to be perfect right now. You just have to get going. So start off by writing that first piece of work. Just a first draft, get it down, and then come back to it later, go do your sport, go work your sporting goals, and then come back and you'll find that you actually can start to edit it. Rather than spending hours procrastinating over just doing something and not doing anything at all, you actually get started, get something down so that you can maybe go away to your sport, work on maybe a workout, your skill, your technique, whatever it is in that session. Your mind will still be going, and then chances are you'll come back and you'll be able to edit it. You've got that work already moving, you've created some momentum, but it doesn't have to be perfect straight away. So don't think it has to be perfection, just get some progress, and progress is better than perfection. This leads into next up, which is being efficient when you get to training. This leads in with being really specific with the goals that you are setting when you are going to your sporting sessions and everything you've got going on. A lot of athletes I see focus on just trying to do as much as they can, work hard, but they're actually working in many different directions and almost going in no direction at all. So if you can come in and focus on having one thing, just one thing to begin with that you want to leave that session with, knowing that if you've done it, it's been a good session and it's also worked towards this end goal that you might have. It might be a performance, it might be turning professional, it could be whatever it is, but it's ultimately moving you in a direction towards that goal. If you don't have specificity and you're not efficient on that time, it's wasted time, it's wasted energy. So get in, do the work, and be effective. And this is kind of similar with your studying as well. You want to be really effective in your study sessions, so chunk them out. A technique that I think is brilliant is Pomodoro techniques. This is just where you take 25 minutes, you set a timer, and you do focus work for 25 minutes. Then you give yourself 5-minute breaks. Ideally, you're staying away from distractions like phones, TV, Netflix, whatever it might be, and you are focusing on maybe getting outside, maybe making a drink, staying away from a screen, just allowing your brain to decompress before you start another one. And you might set maybe 3 or 4 Pomodoros, and I promise you, 4 25 minutes of hard focus work, that is a lot and way more than what some really elite academics and athletes will be able to do. And you do that day in, day out, you are stacking days, you are stacking progress. And I promise you, even just doing that, you'll start to see the needle move. But also you'll find that once you start to get progression and you're getting that focus, you'll start to change your habits in how you work. And then you'll see that translate into your sport, your life, and it can be a great end result. And then after you've done these study sessions, this is where you can actually start to use sport as a reward. I found this really effective for me when I would have homework to do or I needed to do a study session, that I actually then rewarded myself with going to a training session after, going to the gym, doing whatever it is that was working towards my sporting goals after I had done my work for my academics. So it might be that you do a couple of Pomodoros or you do a couple of study sessions, and then at the back end of it, you reward yourself with allowing yourself to go do it. And it's because us as athletes, we tend to want to go and do the sporting thing more than our academics. So in order to make yourself do those academic things, hold the sport back as the reward that gets unlocked when you actually do the academic work. That way, you're not only driven to maybe do the work a little bit more because you want to go and do the sport and you want to get that done, but it just feels good. It feels good knowing that, okay, if I get this work done, then I've given myself the right to go and do the sport. And if you don't do that, if you kind of don't do the work, then you go and do the sport and you might start to resent yourself a little bit more because you're like, I didn't do the work. But again, don't beat yourself up. Just try do it the next time and just keep working towards that. Just ultimately keep sport as that reward that gets unlocked, this secret door that gets unlocked for when you have completed the tasks and your study goals that you've set for yourself. And then finally, the last thing that really encompasses how this can work well is just being elite in your habits, such as nutrition and sleep. This is just what being someone who wants to be high level, a high performer who gets their academics done, gets their sport done. It's ultimately a cost that you're going to need to pay. And that requires being fueled by good foods, having good sleep, having good habits around it. And that for me was something that I know went well for me. I was really, really strong on my nutrition because I was putting good fuel in my body. It meant that I could recover from my sport sessions from the day after. So I didn't feel sore. I didn't feel like I didn't want to go and do the work because I maybe was aching, but I had the energy, and good nutrition, good sleep patterns really helped out, and it helps you stay focused, stay sharp, and ultimately it's what being a high performer is all about. Okay, finally, bonus tip, and this was advice that I wish I'd been told much earlier, and it would have helped me figure out and take a lot of pressure off my studies and my sports. And that was that you don't have to have a perfect 50-50 split when it comes to balancing both your sports and your studies. And what I mean by that is that we ultimately think each day needs to be split perfectly 50-50. We need to be doing academics and sports, but rather see your balance as a much longer timescale. You might have to really work hard at your sport for a couple of days. There might be something that you have to do. It might be an event, a tournament, might be a training camp that you have to focus on for a few days. But you have to be really strong with yourself to know that the cost of those 3 days in your sport is that later on you're going to have to flip it and work much more on your academics and then be smarter with your sport. So it's constantly recognizing, is my balance over a longer time period rather than just day by day. So it might be you have this 3 days at a training camp and then the next 3 days after you really focus on your academics. It might be you're a week away and then you focus really hard on your academics. It is knowing that that balance is ultimately at the end. That balance is what you find towards a longer time scale rather than thinking day by day I need to be 50-50, 50-50, 50-50. It's not realistic. It's not really what our schedules allow us. So don't think that it has to be perfect in that way, but be smart, be strategic in knowing that if you've spent more time focusing on sport recently, you're going to have to focus more on your academics at some stage down the line, and that balance will switch. So that's where some of these tips of being really specific, really clear, really structured on what it is that you're working on will not only make you efficient, it'll make you clear and ultimately get the results that you want in both. Ultimately, balancing your sports and studies isn't easy, but with the right approach, it is doable. Take control of your time, focus clearly on your goals, and take care of yourself along the way. Know that progress hasn't got to be perfection, and you will find yourself getting there. If you have got challenges or tips of how you have overcome or balanced your studies, let us know in the comments. Let us know how you've done it, maybe the challenges you've got. There'll be people out there to inspire you, so drop anything in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. But if you are a student athlete, there is also a mindset mistake that you could be making. And if you want to understand that, you're going to want to watch this video next.